in. Good morning. This is the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship meeting. And it is Friday, March 12th. And welcome. Roxanne, would you like to go? Oh, so our next meeting would be April 2nd at 8 a.m. Just to let you guys know. I did send the minutes to Dr. Cortman to review. There were a few meetings ago, but I haven't received them back, so we can't vote on those. And the ones we were good, Charlie had suggested we compile and make one set of minutes. That has not been finished either, unless anyone has any information that I don't have.
Yeah, I do believe we did get it back from GZA. So
Oh.
we do have an approved set of minutes, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of that.
That
I
would
don't
be
think I
great.
got it initially. I think it went to Charlie initially.
Oh, okay.
But let me get those to you, a little bit later in the meeting. I'll pop off and send you an email with it. I'll send it to everybody.
Great. And I guess we'll get started with a report. So Roxanne, if it was, you had mentioned it might be helpful for you to go first. So you may have the floor.
Okay, well, I would say the first two things involve the GZA proposals that we've received, one for lake management plan and one for continued monitoring in 2021. Those were both approved last night to be executed this morning with GZA. And if I can do a share screen, maybe I can bring them up. So Steve, can I get screen sharing enabled?
Okay.
All right, so let me see if I can get to it. Let's see if this is, nope, that's not the right one. Hang on, I don't know why I'm having trouble with this lately. Just give me a sec. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, it says Massachusetts watershed based plan.
Hang on, I have to just kind of, my screen is too many things on it. It's very distracting. Hang on. Here we go. So, there. Anyway, we received an initial proposal for a watershed-based plan, a lake management plan. And if we go through this, basically they put out the scope of work. So they have elements A through I. And what they're talking about doing is identifying causes of impairment and pollution, determine pollutant load reductions needed to achieve water quality goals, describe management measures that will be implemented to achieve water quality goals, identify technical and financial assistance needed to implement the plan, public education and information, implementation schedule and measurable milestones, progress evaluation criteria, and monitoring. And so basically what they're doing, and I want to find where they talk about the model that they're using, and it's in here somewhere, but fundamentally what they're doing is they're using a model that was created by Mass DEP. So they talk about that in this first paragraph here. So they'll collaborate with, provide guidance and assist the town in the preparation of a watershed-based plan, lake management plan as described above. Items outlined below comprise the general consensus of what should be included in a management plan as developed from EPA's 9-point watershed management plan requirements that meet the basic requirements for the Clean Water Act, Section 319 grant funding. Mass DEP's language is similar in intent, but not identical to EPA language. So basically, that's the foundation of where they're going with the format. And in doing so, that gives us the opportunity to have all the information in one place when we go to apply for grants and get funding. And just in a nutshell, this came in and it was then negotiated. I spoke with Steve Roy at GZA in Connecticut, and we brought the cost down to a total of $54,000. Now, this is an estimate, and farther along in this contract is the actual schedule of fees for each individual that would be involved. GZA employees that are involved. And we would be billed on a monthly basis for this. But by bringing this cost down, it had started out at $62,500 and got it down to $42,500. Or 54, I'm sorry, 54. And we have funds already appropriated for Stockbridge Bowl. So we're able to move on this immediately, get it signed and in today. And as soon as they receive the signed document, they will begin work. When I talked to Steve Roy initially, and now we probably added a week to this or so, but I said, look, if we could have a draft back to the SBSC of the lake management plan by the end of March, that would put us in good stead to be able to have you come in, present the draft, we discuss it. Any modifications that are requested or need to be made can be made, and then they would turn around and they would make a presentation at an open public meeting. So that we would have that in advance of annual town meeting. So people can become familiar with this. Here's where we're going. This is what we intend to do. The one thing that they've requested is that any prior reports, no matter really how old, that are in our possession about the lake and the watershed, be supplied to them. So that's an underlying principle of this. Now, they already have LICOT, they already have FUGRO. I have sent them the interfluve study. And when I was talking to Charlie earlier, he said there was a 3D study, and somebody from the SBA, Michael, maybe you can answer this, if that study is out there and can be shared with the SBSC and ultimately with GZA, so they can incorporate it into this lake management plan. So Michael, what do you know about this 3D report? I think it was like drainage, dredging, and drawdown maybe, or the 3Ds.
Well, the 3D was basically incorporated almost in the last, I think it was the FUGRO is the last one, 1996.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea was to dredge, it was dredge, diversion, and drawdown.
Okay.
And in a nutshell, when we received the money from the 319 grant originally, it was to dredge the lake, the outlet around the island, and then draw it down 4.5 feet to 5 or 5 feet. 4.5 feet was basically, and then it would go through the diversion pipe. The water would then flow out, and as the winter would hopefully kill, when we brought the water all the way down, it would kill the milfoil or hinder the growth of the milfoil. But it was Gary, if there's anything that I'm missing, let me know.
And the other thing about this, the lake management plan, that everybody should really be very aware of, is that in our discussions about the NOI for weed harvesting, both last year and this year, NHESP has brought up the requirement that we have a current lake management plan. And since FUGRO was 1996, this was a long time ago, they're looking to us to produce exactly this document, a new lake management plan that will incorporate all the various aspects of lake management. So we want to make sure that we have in this plan various verbiage about dredging, drawdown, herbicide application, benthic mats, hydro raking, etc., so that everything is covered. We cover all the bases in this, and so we have all these various tools at our disposal based on what we see from the monitoring, and, you know, the recommendations of the limnologists on how we react to any given situation that might arise. So I think everybody should be aware of that this is very much on DEP and NHESP's minds, that they want to see a brand new plan come forward that's current and has current information. And the fact that we're collecting data now on a monthly basis this year is completely helpful. I mean, this really supports the idea that we're serious, that we're taking a scientific approach, and that obviously we respect their requirements. And if we have limitations in terms of Marstonia lustrica or bridal shiner or whatever may arise, that we're going to be respectful of that. And I think we illustrate that by being scientific and continuing to collect this data. So then the other one that we signed, which was also negotiated, let me see if I find that one for you. And I sent both of these to everybody this morning. And it's that one. Just give me a sec. I gotta go find it again. Okay, everybody see this one? Okay, so this is the Limnological monitoring program. So this is the proposal for continued monitoring.
My screen is still the same. I don't see anything different.
Really?
Me too.
Oh, it says it's paused. Steve, how do I get out of pause?
I'm not sure what is paused.
I don't know. I've got a little yellow bar at the top. It says your screen sharing is paused. But let me stop share and then I'll start share and I'll go get it. Maybe that'll do it. Can you see it now? Let's see if this is the right document. Can you see it now?
That's a letter to Mike Canales.
Yep. Okay.
See it.
So this is the monitoring proposal. And they don't outline it the same way. But basically they give the scope. So it's basically a repetition of what we've been doing. It will involve 2 trips out by GZA and the 2 prime times that Bob Cortman indicated, which were at ice out basically early in the season and then in July. And let's see, the costs is buried in the text here somewhere. Here it is. So complete scope is not to exceed 35,000. Again, we're only billed for the time they actually put in. And it's divided between spring and then the remainder. So April to June is 13,000, July to November is 22,000. And there is an optional calcite formation study that would be an additional 8,000. And that is invoiced during the second half of the study. So this is basically a repeat of what we're doing this year. And again, this calcite study is optional. And because the calcite study failed this year, they put the traps out and the traps were disrupted, but they could still, from looking at plant material, they could still actually determine that there was calcite formation. And Bob Corbin and I think in our last meeting, he'd indicated that there is another option in terms of doing that, collecting plant materials and then drying it, collecting the calcite, and they can determine, you know, the level of calcite formation in an alternative way to what they had tried this past year. So anyway, both of these were approved. They're both being entered into this morning, and we're off and running for the new season.
Roxanne, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, I think, this is wonderful that we're getting to this level of tangible, intervention in the lake. I think it's a really good sign that things are starting to move along here. How would you recommend that our committee deal with these two documents that you've just shown us? They're pretty complicated. I don't think I can get the whole gist of it immediately. It'll take me a while to look at it. Would you expect us to come back at the next meeting with a little bit of feedback or comment about this, or how do you want to handle it? Is this a done deal that you just want to show us? How would you?
No,
ask us
yes,
to do it?
it's just a done deal that that I'm just showing, and I've shared with you just in case you want to read through this, but it's for informational purposes so that everybody understands here's exactly what the scope is as defined. Here is the cost, and we are moving forward with it.
So this is based on what our committee has already discussed and moved forward with and expected to have. So it's basically moving forward from where we've already discuss things. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
it's
All right.
just confirmation that yes, we are making forward progress. Here we are, and we can anticipate getting a draft of the lake management plan, hopefully at least by the second week of April, first or second week of April, and they will expedite. When I talked to Steve Roy, they're very sensitive to the fact that we want to have this information out and disseminated to the public prior to annual town meeting. So they're very willing to step up their game, so to speak.
Well, good.
The other thing I did want to report was that I did talk to Nat Arai about dredging, and I shared this at the SBA meeting. And we do now, I just saw it this morning, we have received a cost estimate in for the dredging. And Michael, Nathan, have you had a chance to look at that?
I did. Hold on a second. Yeah, I did look at it. And before we comment on it, I spoke to Greg Wellenkamp for just a minute, and he didn't want to comment until he really analyzed it. But in a nutshell, they're talking about 60,000 cubic yards of silt being removed. And you're talking about 20 cubic yards per truckload. You're talking about 3,000 truckloads. I don't think the recommended, when we did this project, we weren't talking nearly that many cubic yards. That's a huge undertaking, although I was surprised at the cost, which they came in. And can I just reveal that? I mean, can we discuss that, Roxanne?
I don't see why not.
All right, well, I'm just an assistant in this thing. They were talking about approximately $2.5 million. I don't have it in front of me, but it seemed actually quite low in a way for that much cubic yardage. And a few concerns were that was a huge amount of silt to be putting into the few areas that we have. But we should discuss that with GZA. But the cost they estimated at 2.5. I could go back to the exact chart, but plus or minus, I think that's what they were looking at.
Where does that dredging take place geographically in the lake?
Basically, it takes place, it's like a Y, Charlie, around the island, a Y around the island, and then down the outlet. Hopefully, also by the town beach. And it was basically, NHESP allowed us to put other areas into one grouping, even if we want to do it later on. We don't have to do it at one time. But the other area was the causeway that we were talking about dredging. It may not be able to be done in this scope of time, the short summer, the summer months, the 4 months in the summer or whatever time we have to do it, but it's part of the project. So it's the causeway, the beach, a Y around the island to make it deeper.
Both sides of the causeway?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because where the silt is now gathering, I think it was mainly the lake side of the causeway. The other side, there was a retaining dump area for the silt, but it had never been cleared out.
That's an important area too, don't you think?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. The issue is the original plan was for the island and the outlet, and then we added the beach area and the causeway to be done if we have the funds or if we have the time or whatever, but it should be done at some point. But you're right, it is an important area.
Well, and the big question is going to be specifically what areas are they targeting and over what period of time? Can this be a phased approach in that you take one area and you do it for X number of months? And if you run out of time, you know, how much time will it take to do, say, around the island? How much time will it take to do over by the causeway? And will those be different phases, maybe done in different years?
Yeah. Can I just address that, Roxanne?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's a major undertaking for a summer disruption. So we really have to think about this. In other words, it's hard for us to come back the next summer because the whole summer in 2022, if we can do it, that whole summer will be a loud, noisy, almost unusable part of the lake because it has to be done in the summer in order to have more water. We don't draw down at any time anymore currently. But basically, Roxanne, you're right. It has to be done. We'll see what we can do, but we have to think about what it means to the lake and when we come back, because it is really a disruptive versus shovel. The shovel wasn't disruptive. Going down with a shovel was a winter thing, and it was a quiet winter thing. By the time the summer came around, it would have been done. But now with the hydro dredging, it's a totally different.
Well, Michael, have you ever experienced in a video or in real life how noisy the hydro dredging is?
It is noisy, Roxanne.
Well, do we have an idea of the decibel level, et cetera? You know, I think it's going to be really important in doing this to educate the public in terms of what to expect.
I don't have the figures, but I looked it up at, maybe 2 years ago or something when we first had it. I looked it up, and it is, it's a big piece of machinery. It's no, we could get you that information, or GZA can get you that information.
Maybe Michael, you bring it next time.
Yeah. But it's going to be a disruptive summer when we do it. Roxanne, go ahead, Roxanne.
Oh, I'm all set.
Oh.
One question.
I mean, just as I went to the SBA meeting, and there's only a couple of other things that came up in that. One thing is they did talk about the specific locations of the geotubes. So if all of you are not aware, there's 3 major locations: 74 Interlaken Road, 28 Beechwood Drive, and 1 Pennyroyal Lane. So that was discussed. Their fundraising was discussed, and they are talking about doing a map for Bullard Woods for $3,000 to $5,000. So that was basically a lot of what was discussed in that meeting that I think this particular group would be interested in.
All right. Thank you, Roxanne, and thank you for all the hard work and sharing that information. Let's see, Charlie, did you want to go second?
Sure. I may have missed something right at the start. Was anybody nominated to do the minutes yet?
No, I've been taking notes, but
Okay.
no.
I've already been too. I'll volunteer to do it this time. Number one. Secondly, again, with respect to the minutes, did I miss us reviewing and approving the minutes that had been sent out to GZA?
No, we didn't do that because I didn't get them back to me and I didn't look them over.
Oh, okay. So we're not ready to do that yet.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so would we put that on the agenda for the next meeting so that we can do
Yes.
that? Okay, so we can catch up with that. They are complicated minutes. My own review of it shows that really we had it pretty good the first time. I'd just like to make a few comments about procedure. But first, before I do that, I want to congratulate Mike Buffoni on returning without any casts on his arms or legs. I'm surprised, but I didn't see your legs, so I can't be sure, right? But you seem to have made it back in one piece, which is good.
I'm in one piece. Thank you for the concern. I appreciate
All right,
that.
well, all right. I just want to be sure about that. Now, okay, so now about procedures. We have a volunteer committee here, and obviously it's a very important thing, and I think we're making good progress with it. And I realize everybody is earnest and understands that this is both a privilege and a responsibility to be on the committee. Now, Jamie is the chair, and she has another life too. Okay, and so what I just want to say, we ran into a few procedural things the last time, which snafu'd our committee meeting, and I think part of that, I think we can avoid by basically trying to back Jamie up a little bit. She's got a lot of responsibility. And as chair, it's a good idea. I know that she tries to get everything in place. I'm going to make a few suggestions, and I only see these as suggestions, but I would really myself profit from getting them back from you, Jamie, in terms of how to set up a routine. As a doctor, you go through this kind of indoctrination. You learn how to do things for something like this committee, because when you're an intern, for example, you have to do all sorts of stuff like write orders and to do IVs and all sorts of things that, it's easy to go down to the emergency room and save somebody's life when they're bleeding to death. I mean, you just go down there and you do it, and that's fine. But then you have to come back, and the hard thing is you have to write orders. You have to do these routine things, and if you don't do them, the care doesn't get done. And that's the place where care really counts in medicine. You can be the hero saving somebody's life, but you get that privilege because you do the routine work well, right? Now we're in a similar position. We're going to try to save the life of the bowl. We're going to have a privilege to really do a good job there. But in order to do that, well, we have to be able to get the mundane, routine stuff in place so that it always works smoothly, right? So the first thing I'm going to suggest to Jamie is that we have an agenda submitted a week beforehand, like on the Friday before the meeting. Post that agenda. And everybody on the committee knows that it should know. This is a suggestion, this is an example, but everybody in the committee should know that by the Thursday before that Friday, we have to give Jamie the agenda items that we want to have posted for that meeting. Otherwise, she's going to say, we're not going to put it on that meeting. We're going to have to wait to the next meeting. And of course, if there's an emergency agenda item, we can do this. Now, but I think that we need to have some kinds of routines that everybody explicitly knows about, so that when we submit stuff, we don't get frustrated or think that Jamie's trying to pull a fast one on us, or she's, whatever, or she went down to Barbados, or who knows where she's going. But the second idea is, sometimes Jamie may not be able to make it to the meeting. And I know that, Mike, that we all try to do a good job here, okay? John Ladici was willing to step in to back her up to do that. I'm going to suggest that I'd like to nominate John to back her up on a regular basis if he needs to with either of these things, so that Jamie, if you run into trouble, John could help you to do. I already asked John about this because he had volunteered before I thought you may not be able to come, just so that we have a backup. This is the way a lot of committees work. On the Board of Health, I'm the chair. Jim Willis backs me up a lot of times with stuff like that. If he sees I don't have the agenda coming down in a timely way, he reminds me, or he does it for me. We need backup. So I'm going to nominate John Ladici to be your backup as co-chair to put in the agenda and to do whatever you need to if you can't do it. That's all. And I'd like to make that as an official nomination. And I'd like to also talk a little bit about how we do the minutes and what we do with the minutes, okay? Usually it's Roxanne and I that put the minutes together, and then we try to put that together. We send it out to the rest of the committee for review, and it's theoretically, we approve that at the next meeting, which is good. The last time, because it was a highly technical meeting, somebody suggested that we not approve those minutes. We send them out to GZA, and I thought that was a very good idea. I mean, I think that kind of highly technical thing we want to have be just, you know, really firmly in place. But after we made that decision and we decided to delay the approval of those minutes and sent them out to GZA, then that same person wanted to have those minutes before they were available, and then wanted to use the previous minutes that we had sort of implicitly agreed weren't 100% authorized. And I understand that these things come up like that, but it didn't, you know, my wife would say that was Meshuggah. You know, this is not the way to do those kind of things. Needs to be organized. So everybody has the right to get the minutes. There's a 10-day period, you know, you need to get the minutes, but I think we should all agree that the way the minutes should be done is we'll agree to, if you want to have the minutes for the meeting, please, you know, I mean, I know I have a lot of other things to do. For me to be looking around trying to get either this minutes or that minutes and rushing them is not something I'd rather be doing. So what I'm saying is let's try to do the minutes in a timely way and get them accomplished in a way that everybody agrees on it. And so that every meeting we can approve the minutes for the previous meeting. That's what we should be doing it in a timely, routine way. I'm sorry if I'm holding forth on that, but I think the minutes are very important, even though they're routine. So with that in place, I'm going to say that I don't have anything else to add now. I think that part of the report that I would give from the Board of Health, the major part would be to discuss those previous minutes that we sent out to GZA and just make sure that everybody understood what we were doing before we approved them. I thought that would be what we would do today, but I won't do that because I don't think we're ready to do it. Otherwise, I'll pass on to the next person.
Thank you, Charlie. So the next person,
So I did nominate John for a co-chair to back you up. Do we have any second on that? I mean, you're the chair, Jamie, but that is a procedure that needs to be attended to.
okay, I don't hear a second, Charlie.
I'll second. Oh, hey, hang on.
Second it. I think it's a good idea. Jamie, I think it's a very good idea for anyone. When I was doing it, it was really like, it's good to have a backup, and it's good for you to be able to talk to somebody or whatever and say, listen, I need help on this or whatever. I mean, I needed help all the time.
Hey, Jamie, I don't know, you haven't said anything about this. Is that something you'd be in favor of?
I'm not against, I'm just, I think the snafu that happened, which happened once, is, it happened in ComCon, but I perfectly can understand the minute snafu is we tried to do it differently. You wanted to send them out and send them back. I never got them back. And then, so yes, that would be fine. But we had a first, we had a second, so we need to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
It should be actually a roll call vote.
Okay. Mike Maffoni.
Aye.
Gary doesn't vote. Michael Nathan.
I agree. I think it's
Yay or nay?
yay.
Okay, Charlie, yay or nay?
Yay.
John,
Yay.
Roxanne,
Aye, yes.
and Jamie, aye. All in favor. Motion passes. So the next person up, Gary Kleinerman, would you like to talk?
You're muted, Gary.
We can't.
Okay, you got me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We plan to open up the Zebra Muscle Washing Station on Memorial Day weekend. We should be fully manned. We have enough money to get through the year this year. We have a surplus left over from last year because we didn't operate 100% of the time. And the docks that we're working on, hopefully we'll get in before Memorial Day. I'm going to be laid up for about a month. I'm having a hernia operation. I've been told I can't do any lifting or any stuff like that for a month. So, but we'll get the docks in by Memorial Day. Other than that, not too much.
Great, thank you, Gary. Any questions for Gary?
Just to add to that, we'll, Mark and I will get the pressure washer running, all the oil changed and all that, and gas can and diesel can filled up for when the time starts. I'll keep in touch with Gary on all that scheduling.
Hey, Buff,
Yeah,
make sure sometime after, I'll say some mid-May, we get up 400 gallons of water in the tank too.
yeah, we'll have the fire chief help us out with that.
Great.
Great. Any questions for Gary? No. Michael, would you like to share any more about dredging?
Well, I'd like to just say this is basically our first year anniversary of the committee. And I thought maybe it would be interesting at the next meeting or soon to go around and reflect on what the committee is about again and what is our function. I feel in many ways that we're sort of listening and getting information, but really not discussing options. And I'm so glad, I mean, Roxanne, I thank you very much for taking up the mantle of getting the lake management plan done. But I'm wondering as a committee, if we should have like seen it or done something with it, whether or not, I mean, it's up for discussion with the group, but I would like to hear from everybody what they feel their job is on the committee and how it's going and whether there should be any different ways of doing the agenda. The agenda seems to be one of reporting from your agency, and I would love to see a list of maybe the most important things facing the lake and how as a committee we take one at a time to give recommendations to the town so that we understand it better. I just feel that we're listening and observing, but I don't feel we're taking in much of the discussion on these important things like lake management plan, which I'm sure was done fine, but I'm not sure we as a committee even discussed it. Anyway, I think there are issues like the harvester, the lake management plan, the restoration of the bowl. I would love to see those being presented in depth as a discussion so we can go before as an advisory group to the select board and give them our opinion of what needs to be done. I mean, that's what I thought the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee was. Roxanne, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just to respond to that, we
Yeah.
did discuss the lake management plan. We did receive input from various members and additionally from Richard Seltzer, which was basically passed on to GZA early on when we were questioning whether or not they were interested in assisting with the lake management plan. This didn't have to go out to bid because this is an engineering contract, and they are the logical people to be involved because they're heavily involved in our monitoring program. They're involved in our dredging program. And so that is an administrative decision, with the town administrator and the select board. However, I understand we're in kind of a strange situation here because what we're doing in terms of putting together the lake management plan is that that's the foundation, and then we move forward from there. And I think that there's going to be lots of opportunity for discussion about various topics. But we're also in the middle of some of these. You know, the dredging operation has been going on now for years. So that's an ongoing situation that we then are going to be in a position as a group to advise the select board. So this is meant to be an advisory group to the select board, and it is meant for us to discuss the findings as they come up. But right now, we're still putting together the framework for that. And I think it's going to become more obvious. And certainly, if you have specific suggestions for how we should move forward in terms of, you know, discussing the various topics, you know, I think we should all weigh in on that. But I think that being a fledgling group, I think we're trying to bring together, and I think we brought together pretty effectively various stakeholders here, and a lot of information has been shared. And that's one of the main functions of this group, is to bring all the data into one place, so then it can be looked at as a whole and how every piece relates to the other pieces. And relying on limnologists and lake managers, obviously GZA, Chris Main and Bob Cortman, to help guide us along in future. And so we now have this good foundation of having, you know, a partial year and now a full year of monitoring and another full year coming up. And once the more information that we gain, I think the better they're going to be able to guide us in terms of where our direction should be, but also more opportunity for us to discuss, well, where do we focus our attentions? And then bring those kinds of recommendations to the select board, and obviously ultimately to the voters to make determination on.
Can I say something about that too? I first of all, I very much sympathize with Michael's point of view about what the function of the committee is, and that we on the committee have the not only the right, but the duty to put forward agenda items that are specific related to our various points of view. You know, the various people on the committee have different interests and foci, and you know, obviously it's not really the blind man and the elephant, but it's the idea that each person has a different point of view because of their special expertise or involvement. Now, I think that I would encourage any member to put forward specific agenda items. That was part of the point I made in the first place, just to make sure that we do have it moving along in that direction. On the other hand, what I have to say is that from the Board of Health's point of view, I feel exactly the opposite in terms of how the committee has functioned so far. So, you know, of course, the Board of Health puts forward its ideas. At least, you know, one of the ways the board got most involved is because of the cyanobacterial blooms and the fact that these can be pretty nasty in lakes and they can have a significant negative effect on the lake. The idea there was that the Board of Health wanted to do was to get a scientific basis for the future approach to that particular kind of problem, so we could decide what to do and to evaluate better what other kinds of future inventions, what affects future interventions like you know, raking and harvesting and herbicides and dredging and everything would have on that particular idea. Now, that doesn't mean that that particular idea is the most important idea or the only idea, but the board put forward its ideas, and we were persistent about that on the agenda. And we had just a few weeks ago a very extensive, substantial report on the monitoring that had been put in place as a result of those agenda items. So from the Board of Health's point of view, I think we accomplished from our inputs exactly what we were hoping to do, that we wanted to get a scientific basis for understanding this. Now, so whereas I agree that this is the function of the committee, I don't know how the board was able to achieve what it wanted from a different point of view than maybe some other interests would have. But What I would say is that some of the things take longer than others. Some of the things have a lot more legal interventions and hurdles and bureaucratic hurdles to follow and everything. So it's like running in a swamp for a while. You have to deal with, bureaucratic government agencies and stuff. So it makes it a little bit less obvious that is in fact what the committee is doing. But I believe we've had a good dialogue so far about the various issues. I've learned a lot from listening to you, Michael, and from listening to other people about what needs to be done in the lake. And I would hope and I would encourage everybody to make that even a better dialogue as we go along. And I hope, Michael, you understand that I will encourage and I hope to have even more ideas put forward, and I would look forward to them. And I would certainly hope that if anybody feels that they can't put forward their ideas, that they take a break and put those ideas forward anyway and say, these are my ideas. Let's go with them and see what we can do. I hope we can all move along with in this next year. I'm surprised a year has passed already, and work together. And I think we've already done that.
Thank you, Charlie. I also agree that it's my understanding we're an advisory committee, and that was the idea, was to bring all of our ideas or thoughts or expertise, as Charlie has said, and Roxanne has said, together. And as we move forward, it maybe will congeal or move in a different way. But so far we were in the process of just gathering information and gathering ideas and thoughts. And we can get, we can change direction and stuff. It's not, fixed. I hope that answers your question, Michael.
I didn't really, thank you, Jamie. I really didn't feel like I had a question more than a reflection on how I saw the committee. And absolutely, it's a young committee. And absolutely, it takes a while for us to get our bearings as to, and it'll take on a motion on itself eventually, but I'm just concerned, rightly, wrongly, whatever, that we're hearing information, but we're not really discussing the information so much. In other words, like, Roxanne, don't take this wrong, because I can't tell you how much I appreciate you're taking this on, the lake management, but just some kind of a discussion on making sure that certain things are in it, even though that you say they'll come back to us, but just us as a group being able to dissect it and say, should we be looking at someone else? Should we be looking at a Ken Wagner? Should we be looking at the lady who did? Should we be getting competing projects? I don't know. It may not be the right way, but we as a group, that's what the stewardship is. And when we come to a consensus, we then say the vote was that we're going with GZA. They're the logical choice. And we're asking Roxanne as our representative to go ahead and present us to the select board. I just feel that a lot of it are fait accomplis without a discussion, and the end result might be the exact same thing. Roxanne, again, I thank you for doing it, but I'm just saying as a committee, I've said enough.
And I could be completely wrong. I guess my feeling is that we're an advisory. We can take a vote, but we advise the select board, but we don't have controlling power.
No, without a doubt, but we're still a group, is what I'm saying, to discuss it. And then we advise them that this is what we feel. That I thought that was what the committee is. I could be, and it may end up being that as we go along. But just wanted to reflect on a year and thought we would go through maybe the next meeting, everyone think about it for the next 2 weeks or whatever, of how they see the committee going forward. Right. And I want to thank all of you.
It's a good idea, Michael. I think that's a good way to open our eyes for the next year. I really like that idea. So I think you made a good point. So
absolutely. But I'd like to stress that the ball is now back in our court. Now that we actually have contracted with someone to do the lake management plan, the ball is back in our court because a draft is going to come to the SBSC. And at that point is when, if we see that there are omissions or there are things that we want to change in that plan, then that is the time that we will make those kinds of decisions as a group and discuss those kinds of decisions and incorporate them into a finalized plan. So that opportunity is still sitting out there. And I want to also remind you, and it's been tough for me this week because I was down and out for a couple days getting my second vaccine. And my next big job is to actually put together a warrant article creating the SBSC as a true commission so that this will go on in perpetuity. And it will be as an advisory group, but certainly the opportunity is going to arise, particularly in this coming year. I think once we have a lake management plan and we all agree on it, and that lake management plan is intended to be a living document. So that means that the SBSC, at least on an annual basis, will be reviewing the plan as it stands and making changes to that plan as necessary, because conditions will change. We may encounter different challenges in the future, and that will be our job to work on that management plan. So then the ball really is in our court. And in terms of entering into contracts in that regard, yeah, we are an advisory committee and we will discuss future contract negotiations or contract possibilities. On the other hand, that really, to a great extent, falls now to our very capable town administrator. And in this case, because GZA has such an intimate knowledge already of the dredging project, of our monitoring program, and a hands-on knowledge of our lake, it seemed to Michael Canales, and obviously to me as well, that this was the logical way to go if we wanted to get this done in a timely manner. And that was highly stressed in the beginning of these conversations. So Michael, it isn't that anyone is trying to, forge ahead without considering this group. It is a matter of trying to be timely and making it be a logical choice. And we do not have to go out to bid for these types of engineering contracts. So it's really a matter of just trying to get this in place so that we can keep moving forward and we can get our NOI for weed harvesting in place as soon as possible right now.
Thank you, Roxanne. Mike Buffoni, did you have, you haven't had a chance to speak.
With the ice on the lake, nothing really to add. We'll start testing when the ice comes off and gather the data and do our thing.
Anyone have questions for Mike? Okay. John L., do you want to share?
Thank you, Jamie. I was going to continue on what Michael Nathan has said. I think that it is a young committee, and I feel that I'm still trying to figure out, since I got put in the committee, as to what our purpose is, or what my purpose is. We're meeting about once a month, and I find myself having to be redundant sometimes as to what took place at our last meeting with the sewer and water. So I can just repeat what I said the last time. But I think that we owe it to this committee to be a little bit more pointed, perhaps a little bit more efficient, and have an agenda. And having an agenda, as we've been talking about ad nauseum all day, I think would really make our job much more fruitful, because then I could come to the committee with specific thoughts and take away thoughts that I can bring to the sewer and water. I just think that we ought to revisit perhaps the frequency of this meeting. I don't know. This is a twice a month meeting, the
Yes.
way I understand it. The committee that I serve in Sewer and Water only meets once a month. I wondered if we should synchronize them a little differently. I know that there are other committees that you members belong to, and I suspect that they have different rhythms. But I think, is there, so here's a question. Is there a reason why we do this twice a month rather than once a month?
Charlie, do you know that? Why?
Well, this is another idea. I think Michael Nathan and some other people would say that we were not moving along fast enough to get certain things done. And that occurs during certain times of the year. And then there are other times when things get sort of settled for a while, and we're in the process of dealing with a lot of other things, and the whole negotiating situation slows us down, and we don't really have a lot of things to do at that point. So there is a variability of the tasks that the committee might have, and in terms of their urgency, their concentration, their focus, and so that I think we did sort of accommodate that over the winter, where we decided to forego a couple of meetings because we were in a kind of an abeyance period with respect to waiting for the results of the monitoring from the Cortman group. I don't think we necessarily have to be fixed particularly to a twice a month period of time. I'm not necessarily in favor of that, but what I would suggest is, and I'm been hearing this, I said this, I think that it's been said by a couple of people on the committee, we need to, I think personally, we should figure out what agenda items we're going to be putting at the next meeting now. I mean, we shouldn't just be giving reports of what was going on up to now. We should be already thinking, when we give a report, what's the next agenda item that we want to have for the committee? And so then we can start to think about what the timing of the next meeting should be. So if somebody doesn't have an agenda item, then maybe we don't need a meeting. You know, I would say that's I think that makes a lot of sense. But you know, there are, and please, maybe I misinterpreted things, but there are certain people on the committee who feel we've been moving too slowly, and at the same time feel they haven't had the chance to put those agenda items forward that they wanted to. And I would like to say to everybody, let's set up a system to facilitate having those agenda items specifically on the next agenda. And I see the first step in that is when you give your report, think about what agenda item you want to have at the next committee meeting. What are you going to do? And if everybody says they don't have an agenda item, then it says, well, why do we need a meeting that next time? That's a pretty straightforward idea. But I think that we should give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. And you know, Michael Nathan, I think, had a very good point that he felt like maybe he hadn't had the chance to put forward agenda items. I want to make it clear how that's I'd like to try to figure out how do we do that so that he can get those agenda items forward. And as I said, my suggestion is be thinking about that now. Michael, you should give us your agenda item that you want to talk about at the next meeting now. What are those agenda items? How can we move forward and do that? And when we have specific agenda items that we know what we're going to be dealing with, we can decide when should we have the next meeting. That's
Charlie.
It's working the other way around.
Charlie, first of all, I think what you're saying is really good, really good. Thank you. And Jamie, what I'm going to say now, please don't take it in any negative. It's really not meant, but the agendas have been basically the same of everyone giving a report, giving their report. And my concern is that we really should focus on what are the top 5 items or 5 things that we need to look at on the lake. And each item may be just that one item, that one agenda for a discussion for an hour of everybody's point of view, or a history of it, or an education on it, just sort of like we did with the cyanobacteria, and now move on to whatever the group feels. Like I feel the most important thing we're faced with, and I know I've said this 1,000 times, but I want to make sure that everybody on this group understands the importance of it, is the restoration project. Without that restoration project, we can't visualize it today that it's a problem. But once we get in and once we have the discussion, I think everyone will realize how important it is going forward for the town and our community in the next 10, 20, 30 years, for our children and grandchildren, that we have the opportunity now to fix this or to make it better. That I would love to see on the agenda.
Well,
I would-
Michael, you shouldn't be saying you'd love to see that on the agenda. You should say, I want.
Well, I had asked.
That's what you should.
Charlie.
If you did look on the agenda, I changed it. When I sent out the one for this meeting, I gave each person a specific thing to talk about.
You
So
do.
if you read it, that's great. If you didn't, that's not, I can't
No.
help you.
What,
Um,
Jamie,
So I did change the style of agenda. I think that I tried to accommodate everyone, and I've heard everyone's suggestions. I will put them in place, but I'm also confused that I've been told how important it is to meet twice a month, and we have to meet, and now, so I'm doing my best. I'm hearing a lot of different information, and it's a lot to take in.
yeah.
It's
So
very
what,
confusing.
This is much more complicated than it needs to be.
Exactly.
Oh, say what the agenda item is that you want, and let's put it on for the next meeting. It's very simple. It's very simple. That's how we got the cyanobacteria agenda put through. Each time we had a meeting, we figured out what was the next agenda that what do we want to have on the agenda about this the next time, so we could move forward. That's each of our responsibilities. And when we don't have agenda items, we don't need a meeting.
Charlie and Jamie, what I'm trying to say is that perhaps we don't need everybody making a report. Maybe we agree that this is the one project we're going to discuss for that meeting. In other words, we might be too democratic, but we're diluting the subject matter. Maybe when I don't mean to say like Charlie uses his thing about when he was a doctor. I ran a company 27 years, and we tried to, I mean, it didn't work all the time because you get around a conference table and things go whatever, but pick what we wanted to accomplish, what new product we were designing, or what who we wanted to what buyers we wanted to talk to. But I'm saying is, maybe we don't need all the different people weighing in on an agenda. That Jamie pick the one agenda. I would recommend that for the next meeting, we talk about the importance of the restoration, or in the meeting afterwards. But we're heading towards a time delay if we want to make it
I make a
2022.
motion that we put the lake restoration project on the agenda for the next
I
meeting.
did.
Yeah.
I wrote it down for Michael, and I just before we close, I feel like everyone's a part of the committee, and to give everyone voice. And if they
Right.
want to speak, they can, and if they don't want to speak, they don't have to. But everyone has a voice. We are a part of an entire committee, and that is why I
was just
put
giving my
everyone's
suggestion.
name up.
Just giving my suggestion.
Of course. Anything else today that you want on the agenda for next month or in April?
Um,
I'd like to
no.
put on the review.
Wait, Roxanne was first.
Yeah, Jamie, yeah, I want to just say that I completely support and think it's very appropriate that we discuss the dredging project in the next meeting.
Of course.
But I would suggest that we invite Greg Wellenkamp to come in, and I'm hoping that by the time we have our next meeting, some of his questions about the cost estimate that came in will have been answered. And Michael, it might be wise to maybe be able to speak with Nat Arai
Right.
and Greg and look at, okay, exactly how would we be timing this? What's the amount of time? What are these areas? What will be involved? And that's something that we then can discuss, as well as getting an initial update about the costing. But then we can discuss, okay, what's the best way to move forward with that particular project? Do we have to phase it and, create different phases? But that's something that I think would be an hour discussion.
Right, right's what I'm saying. Roxanne, exactly. Group thinking on this thing is always a wonderful concept. And there are so many headwinds that we have with this project, even though it's sort of moving along. But if we want to hit 2022 and do this, we've got to discuss the issues and have Greg come to our committee. And I agree, Roxanne, that's what I was going to suggest.
Charlie?
Yeah, I'd like to put the review of the minutes that we sent out to
Yeah.
GCA on the thing. It doesn't, we don't have to read the whole minutes if you don't want to, but please, everybody, review those minutes. We sent them to GCA at the behest of the thing, and I'll give a very brief report on I'd like to put this on the agenda for part of the Board of Health, just to put in the different things that GCA added. They didn't make any corrections particularly, but they did add a few things, and I'd like to just highlight those. And then I'd like to see us approve those minutes.
And Charlie, just so you know, during this meeting, I have now forwarded those to the entire group. And I think Chris's additions are all like redlined. So I think they're obvious what they inserted.
Thank you, Roxanne. All right, if no one else has any comments or questions, I'd like to adjourn.
So moved.
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you for everyone's service and for being here. I'll see you April 2nd with the agenda. I'll send you the agenda.
Thank you.
Jamie,
Great.
thank you.